for today's sermon, I discovered that many a commentary and sermon that had been written describes today's gospel as a difficult, challenging, and even jarring one. Here's a sampling of some of the descriptions. An Episcopal priest said, "Today's gospel is a difficult one. It's confrontational and it doesn't leave much of any wiggle room. We're either open to come to the future or we're not." A Lutheran pastor out of Michigan said, "Jesus' words to us today are tough and rather hard to swallow. Jesus isn't in a bad mood, he's just focused." A Presbyterian pastor said, "In our passage today, you find some of Jesus' hardest sayings on the discipleship that challenge how we think about what it means to follow after him. And you probably already picked up the abruptness with which Jesus speaks to these three individuals. And we're kind of taken aback by that, because it really doesn't leave a lot of room for any negotiation, and we're thinking, goodness, where's that patient, gentle Savior that I like? I don't see him anywhere in this gospel." And then the last observation comes from Matt Skinner, professor of New Testament at Luther Seminary. He says, "As you're preparing for this particular sermon, it might be easier to apologize for what he says here. Make a joke like, 'Good thing we're saved by grace,' and cue the hymn." Well, that might be an easy out, and it was tempting. I chose Matt's other word of advice regarding this reading. Strap yourself in for really encountering a different way of inhabiting the world. So, here we go. There's a lot to unpack in these approximately 11 verses, beginning with what might be going on that explains why Jesus is acting in a seemingly harsh and abrupt manner. Verse 51, "When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem." This signals a change of direction in Jesus' ministry. Jesus moves from a ministry in Galilee to begin traveling to Jerusalem. Caroline Lewis, the Marbury Anderson Chair in Biblical Preaching at Luther Seminary describes it like this: "This is a pivotal point, and that Jesus is acting from a place of urgency. He is hyper aware of the fact that every minute counts." Because his disciples did not know what he would face in Jerusalem, Jesus is preparing them both for the journey to Jerusalem and for continuing the ministry after he's gone. He is preparing his disciples for the radical changes they will experience as a result of death and resurrection, of his death and resurrection. He's preparing them to step in and pick up the mantle. So, to make sure he really has their attention, Jesus is brutally honest about what answering a call to discipleship looks like and what expectations come with answering the call. Wesley Allen Jr. observes that Jesus is pushing whatever understanding of discipleship they had to a deeper level. When his disciples want a finger point and command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, meaning those who rejected him in Samaria, Jesus rebukes them. His message is, nope, no more vengeance. That's not how we're going to do it now, folks. The way forward is not the way of hatred and revenge. The way forward requires disciples and the three would-be followers to examine their own life commitments, calling all who follow Jesus to order their priorities so that their lives are radically free to follow him. Now, that's not an easy ask. Responding to this call requires, and we keep hearing it all the time in this particular gospel, radical change about how we go about living our lives. And as illustrated through the three conversations with the would-be followers, the response to the ask is often prefaced with a, "Yeah, but," or a, "Sounds good, but I first need to," which are often code phrases for, "I'm not ready or willing to let go and to move forward." set my face to Jerusalem. So how might this message translate into our current world? Well, Father Mike Marsh, who's a rector of St. Philip's Episcopal Church in, of all places, Uvalde, Texas, he says, I found his words very relevant about how this does translate. He says, today's gospel has much to say about the current events of our world and our life circumstances. Today's gospel won't let us turn away from people and the situations that are right in front of us or the future that is coming to us. If we're going to set our face on Jerusalem, then we must first face up to ourselves, the condition of our lives, the state of the world, and the direction we are headed. End of quote. To set our face on Jerusalem, it is necessary to step into a place of uncertainty and vulnerability. This means letting go of or giving up something of ourselves and our lives. It calls for us to detach ourselves from material possessions and be willing to leave the past behind. This also means taking on an active rather than a passive role. We are called to step in and stand up rather than stand by and stand down. We are called to pick up the mantle. We are called to step in and stand up to affirm our United Church of Christ Synod resolution, which states and highlights the importance of ensuring access to the full range of reproductive health care regardless of race, religion, or economic status. Okay, but before I do that, we are called to step in and stand up to systems that perpetuate injustice and structural racism. Sounds good, but before I do that, we are called to step in and stand up to actively support efforts to eliminate food insecurity. Oh boy, okay, yep, I'm there. But before I do that, I need to. We are called to step in and stand up for our LGBTQ plus siblings, whose rights to live authentic lives is under attack. Okay, but before I do that, I need to. We are called to step in and take action to stem the carnage of gun violence. Okay, but before I do that, I need to. It is so much harder and messier to follow Jesus in life than in principle. At times, I feel for me, it's almost an impossible task. I feel I'm not prepared, or I'm not willing to do the hard work, or ask myself the tough questions, because actually that means I might have to make hard choices. I can't see a clear path sometimes. I can't consult Google Maps to find my way. And it involves personal starts and stops and detours. And I conveniently find all kinds of distractions and excuses along the way. And when I get to that place, I reflect again on the words of Father Mike Marsh. Today's gospel does not allow for excuses, justifications, running away, or hiding. Our lives are too important, and we matter too much to allow for that. To struggle with the questions raised in today's gospel is the beginning of setting our face to go to Jerusalem. Let us not turn away from Jerusalem. Let us not turn away from each other. And let us stand together and set our faces to go to Jerusalem. So, are you ready to pick up the mantle and step in? May it be so.